Congress shall make no law respecting, ... whole bunch of really important things that we're just gonna ignore for the moment, or abridging the freedom of speech, ... more important things. I wrote up here a sort of alternate version of that, which you've probably all heard a million times and not really thought about very much in the end of things. Government shall make no law in respect to or abridging freedom of speech. This is how the First Amendment's freedom of speech aspect works. Government cannot get in our way of our right to say things that we like to say. That sounds really self-evident that that's how it works, that government is the essential part of this, but it's actually really misunderstood. To explain this, I'd like you to harken back to ye olde summer of 2012, when some of you might remember that the owners of Chick-fil-A said, hey, we don't support gay marriage. And then people who did support gay marriage said, we don't like you, you're mean, we're not gonna eat your chicken. And then Chick-fil-A made a brilliant rhetorical move and had a Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day where you were to eat chicken if you supported their First Amendment rights, which is awesome. But their First Amendment rights had never been violated, nor were they at risk, quite frankly, because the government had gone nowhere near this. This was essentially a very, very public fight between a whole bunch of private citizens, which is what the First Amendment is meant to facilitate. The Supreme Court backed that idea up, that this is what the First Amendment is meant to do in 2011 in Snyder v. Phelps. What happened in Snyder v. Phelps was the family of Corporal Snyder, who had died in military, had sued the Phelps family and Westboro Baptist for picketing his funeral. They had sued under a whole bunch of thoughts, but the charge that really mattered was the intentional infliction of emotional distress, or the IIED claim. IIED claims are tort law. They're when people do horrible things to each other and we sue each other for them. And in this case, IIED is, you have to prove a whole bunch of stuff, but what Westboro Baptist did was unquestionably an intentional infliction of emotional distress under the legal laws. So Westboro Baptist said, yeah, you're right, but we're raising the First Amendment as our affirmative defense, which means we did it, you caught us, our bad, not really, but we get to because it's our right under the First Amendment. And the court thought about it and they said, look guys, we don't like these people any more than you do. They're mean and bullies and we really wish we could help you out, but they're right. We don't have the right as the court to tell them that they can't say the things that matter to them because it's really hurting their feelings. Why is this important? So in 1949, South Pacific debuted on Broadway. 1949 was 4 years after the end of World War II, which means that every person who saw that play would have in some way have been affected by the war, whether they had fought in it, whether they had lost family members in it, whether they had been Japanese Americans who had been interned during it. Everybody would have been affected. There's a song at the major climatic moment of the show. I'm gonna sing it to you because I tried it both ways and it works better as a song, but fair warning, not my day job. So it goes, you've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be carefully taught. As you can imagine, audiences were a little bit uncomfortable about this song. And in fact, their producers came to them and they were like, guys, we don't really like this song. Can we just take it out? Take it out? And Rodgers and Hammerstein said, well, sure, we just won't do the show. And that's cool. And And South Pacific had already sold $400,000 worth of tickets. It wasn't even on Broadway yet. These were pre-ticket sales. So, of course, just so you know, that's like $3.9 million in today's terms. So the producers were like, oh no, we love that, let's do that song. So South Pacific went on Broadway. Let's change the situation. Let's say that it's not the producers who come and say, we don't like this song, we don't want you to do it. Let's say somebody sues Rodgers and Hammerstein under intentional infliction of emotional distress or anything. Pick a cause. And the court says, yeah, you're hurting their feelings. You really can't do this. So now Rodgers and Hammerstein have no negotiation power. You don't negotiate with courts. You don't negotiate with the government. If the government tells you you're not going to do your song in your show, you're not going to do your song. Because if you do, you're going to go to jail. So you either just don't do the song, or you don't do the play. And then, first of all, America loses one of the cornerstones of Broadway classics. And secondly, this message that I think today we can all agree is pretty important just doesn't get said. As far as I know, in the history of the world, there has never been a problem that has been solved by shutting down conversation. And once you start shutting down conversation, for any reason, whether it's because it hurts people's feelings or because we just don't like it or whatever, there's no way to stop. That means there's a lot of noise. But it also means that when we listen, we might hear the things that we really need to hear. Thank you.